My name is Travis Wilson, I'm 32, and for the past decade, I've watched my sister Rebecca destroy our family with a web of lies. While I worked 3 jobs to help with her medical bills, she was secretly living a double life. I always knew something was off, but I never imagined the depth of her deception until I caught her on video. Last month, I finally exposed everything at our family dinner. The look on her face when everyone walked away. Worth every second of the hell she put me through. Before I dive into this family nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and stay until the end to see how I finally reclaimed my life after years of manipulation. Growing up in Portland in a middle-class neighborhood, our family seemed normal from the outside. Mom worked as a high school teacher, Dad was in sales at a local manufacturing company, and we lived in a comfortable 4-bedroom house with a decent backyard. Nothing fancy, but we never wanted for anything important. At least, that's what I thought. From my earliest memories, there was always something different about how my parents treated Rebecca and me. Rebecca was 3 years younger, and from the moment she was born, she was labeled the fragile one. If we were playing and she fell, my parents would rush to her side while telling me to be more careful. If we both caught the same cold, somehow her symptoms were always more severe, requiring more attention, more medicine, more concern. I remember my 10th birthday party. Mom and Dad had promised me a special celebration with friends at the local bowling alley. I'd been looking forward to it for months. The morning of the party, Rebecca complained of a stomachache. Within an hour, my birthday was cancelled, and both parents spent the day taking Rebecca to the doctor and then pampering her at home. The doctor found nothing wrong, but that didn't matter. My friends were called and told not to come, and my cake sat uneaten in the refrigerator. I spent my birthday alone in my room building Lego sets while I heard my mother's soothing voice reading stories to Rebecca downstairs. Travis needs to understand that family comes first, and right now your sister needs us, Dad explained when he finally came to check on me around bedtime. I nodded, fighting back tears. I'd already learned that showing disappointment would only get me labeled as selfish. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I made the honor roll, my parents gave a quick, good job, before turning to Rebecca's C+ in math, celebrating her improvement with ice cream. When I won the state science competition in 8th grade, the victory was overshadowed because Rebecca had a mysterious dizzy spell the morning of the awards ceremony. Uncle James was the only one who seemed to notice. My father's brother would visit several times a year, and he always made a point to celebrate my achievements. "You're going places, kid," he'd tell me, slipping me $20 or taking me fishing when he was in town. "Don't let anyone dim your light." High school brought some relief as I threw myself into academics and swimming. I earned a partial scholarship to Oregon State for engineering, and for once, I felt like my future was brightening. The acceptance letter arrived in April of my senior year, and that evening I announced my scholarship at dinner. "That's wonderful, Travis," Mom said, but her smile faded quickly as she turned to Rebecca. "Honey, you've barely touched your food. Are you feeling okay?" Rebecca, then 15, pushed her plate away. "I'm just really tired. And my joints hurt. All of them." She winced dramatically as she reached for her water glass. That night began what would become Rebecca's medical journey, as my parents would later call it. Within a week, Rebecca was complaining of chronic fatigue, joint pain, persistent headaches, and sensitivity to light. My graduation came and went with minimal celebration because Rebecca was having one of her bad days. My parents took her to doctor after doctor, searching for answers. By the end of summer, Rebecca had been tentatively diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition that doctors couldn't pinpoint exactly. The specialists my parents found explained that these conditions could be tricky to diagnose definitively, often taking years to identify properly. Rebecca needed rest, minimal stress, and careful monitoring. I deferred my scholarship for a year to help at home. "Just until we get a handle on Rebecca's treatment plan," Dad assured me. "Your sister needs us all right now." That year stretched into 2, then 3. I took night classes at the community college while working days to help with what my parents called the medical fund. Insurance covered some costs, but the specialized treatments and consultations Rebecca supposedly needed were often out-of-pocket expenses. Through it all, I noticed things that didn't quite add up. Rebecca, who claimed to be too exhausted to help with household chores, somehow had energy to spend hours on social media. Her sensitivity to light disappeared when she wanted to watch a movie. Her food allergies seemed to conveniently affect only foods she disliked. Uncle James noticed too. During a rare moment alone during his Christmas visit when I was 22, he pulled me aside. "Something's not right with that girl's condition," he murmured, careful to keep his voice down. "I've seen her running up the stairs when she thinks no one's looking, then limping when your parents come home." I defended Rebecca at the time. "She has good days and bad days. That's how these conditions work." Uncle James gave me a long look. "Maybe. Or maybe she's figured out the best way to stay the center of attention." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Just don't put your whole life on hold for this, Travis. You deserve your own shot." But family loyalty ran deep, and despite my growing doubts, I couldn't bring myself to question the narrative that had been established. Rebecca was sick, she needed support, and as her brother, it was partly my responsibility to provide that support. Even as my own dreams slipped further away. By the time I hit my mid-20s, my life had become a grueling routine dictated by Rebecca's needs. I was working a full-time construction job during the day, then picking up evening shifts at a local warehouse. Weekends were spent driving Rebecca to specialist appointments, 2 hours away, or covering for her at the small online business she'd started selling handmade jewelry, a business that somehow managed to operate even when she was too ill to get out of bed for family functions. The timing of Rebecca's worst episodes developed an uncanny correlation with my life milestones. When I finally completed my associate's degree in engineering technology, Rebecca developed mysterious seizure-like symptoms the night before graduation. Instead of attending my ceremony, I spent 8 hours in the emergency room while doctors ran tests that showed nothing conclusive. When I received a promotion to project manager at the construction company, Rebecca called Mom in hysterics, claiming she'd fainted and couldn't feel her legs. By the time I arrived at the house, she was wrapped in blankets on the couch, looking pale but somehow managing to update her social media about her terrifying episode. "They think it might be a new neurological component to my condition," she told me weakly as our mother fluttered around adjusting pillows and bringing tea. "The doctor said I shouldn't be alone for at least a week." I canceled my celebration dinner with coworkers and moved back into my old bedroom temporarily. A week turned into a month, then 2. By then, it seemed easier to just stay. It was during this time that I met Sarah. She worked as a nurse at the urgent care center where I took Rebecca during one of her breathing difficulties. Sarah was kind but direct, with warm brown eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that I found immediately attractive. After Rebecca was treated and released, again with no clear diagnosis, I worked up the courage to ask Sarah to coffee. To my surprise, she said yes. Our relationship developed quickly, and for the first time in years, I had something in my life that wasn't overshadowed by Rebecca's health drama. Sarah was passionate about her work, loved hiking on weekends, and made me laugh more than I had in years. 3 months into dating, I brought Sarah home for dinner. Rebecca was having a good day. She'd done her hair and makeup and was wearing regular clothes instead of the pajamas she typically wore around the house. During dinner, she spoke at length about her condition, using complex medical terminology, and describing her daily struggle in vivid detail. Later that night at Sarah's apartment, I noticed she seemed troubled. "What's on your mind?" I asked as we sat on her couch. Sarah hesitated. "This is awkward because she's your sister, but..." Some of the symptoms Rebecca described don't quite match the condition she claims to have. "What do you mean?" Well, she mentioned peripheral neuropathy affecting her left side, but then used her left hand perfectly throughout dinner. And the medication combinations she listed, some of those shouldn't be taken together. If she were actually taking all those pills, she'd have serious side effects that weren't evident. I felt a flash of defensiveness. She's been dealing with this for years. Maybe she knows her body better than textbook descriptions. Sarah touched my arm gently. Maybe. I could be wrong. Just keep your eyes open, okay? I nodded but changed the subject. Despite my own suspicions, having someone else question Rebecca's illness felt like a betrayal. As the months passed, my parents increasingly restructured their lives around Rebecca's needs. Mom took early retirement to be Rebecca's care coordinator, and Dad worked extra hours to compensate for the lost income. Their retirement savings dwindled as they paid for experimental treatments and special diets. The family home was renovated to add accommodations for Rebecca's claimed mobility issues: a first-floor bedroom, a wheelchair ramp rarely used, grab bars in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Rebecca's social media presence grew. She started a blog chronicling her invisible illness journey and gained a modest following of sympathetic supporters. She posted artistic photos of pill bottles, hospital bracelets, and herself looking gaunt and sad in waiting rooms. What her followers didn't see were the shopping trips and restaurant outings that somehow occurred between medical crises. My relationship with Sarah became increasingly strained as Rebecca's demands on my time multiplied. If Sarah and I planned a weekend away, Rebecca would inevitably have an emergency requiring my immediate presence. When Sarah gently suggested that perhaps Rebecca could call another friend or use a rideshare service occasionally, I found myself defending my sister even as resentment built inside me. "You don't understand what it's like for her," I argued during one particularly heated discussion. "She doesn't have the luxury of normal relationships or independence. And you don't have the luxury of a life outside your sister's control," Sarah countered. "Travis, when was the last time you did something just for yourself without feeling guilty or being interrupted by a crisis?" I couldn't answer because I honestly couldn't remember. Privately, I began documenting inconsistencies in Rebecca's behavior and symptoms. The sister who claimed to be too weak to load the dishwasher somehow had the strength to rearrange her bedroom furniture when she wanted a change. The severe food allergies that required special meals somehow disappeared when Mom made Rebecca's favorite desserts. The sensitivity to noise that prevented her from attending my work functions didn't affect her ability to blast music in her room or go to movie theaters. The cognitive dissonance was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, but years of conditioning had taught me to suppress my doubts. Questioning Rebecca meant questioning everything about our family dynamic, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face what might lie beyond that door. The moment that finally shattered my denial came on an ordinary Tuesday. I had stopped by my parents' house to drop off some groceries, using my key to let myself in since Mom was at a doctor's appointment with Rebecca. Or so I thought. As I placed the bags on the kitchen counter, I heard thumping music coming from the basement, our converted home gym that had gone largely unused since Rebecca's illness. Curious, I quietly opened the basement door. There was Rebecca, my chronically ill, supposedly energy-depleted sister, running full tilt on the treadmill. Not walking slowly. Not doing gentle stretches. Running at a pace that would challenge even me, her face flushed with exertion rather than fever, hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing proper workout clothes. I stood frozen in the doorway, grocery receipts still clutched in my hand. Rebecca had told us just that morning that she was having severe joint pain and fatigue, too unwell to attend our cousin's baby shower. Yet here she was, running like an athlete in training. She caught sight of me and stumbled, nearly falling before grabbing the treadmill handles and hitting the emergency stop. For a brief moment, raw panic flashed across her face before she composed herself. "Travis! You scared me!" She grabbed a towel, dabbing at her face. "I was just trying to push through a little exercise. My physical therapist suggested I attempt short bursts on good days to maintain muscle tone." "Short bursts? The treadmill says you've been running for 42 minutes at 7 miles per hour. She glanced at the display and quickly powered off the machine. "It's complicated. Sometimes movement actually helps the pain, even though it seems counterintuitive." I just stared at her, the pieces finally clicking into place. All the inconsistencies, the convenient timing of her episodes, Sarah's professional doubts, they suddenly formed a clear picture. "You're not sick," I said quietly. "You never were." Rebecca's expression hardened for just a second before crumpling into practiced vulnerability. "How could you say that? After everything I've been through? Just because you catch me having one good moment doesn't erase years of suffering." She brushed past me, limping now, the transformation so immediate it was almost impressive. By the time she reached the stairs, she was leaning heavily on the railing, her breathing labored. That night, I called my parents and asked for a family meeting without Rebecca. They were reluctant but agreed when I insisted it was important. In their living room, I carefully explained what I'd seen and suggested we install cameras in the common areas of the house. "For Rebecca's safety," I explained, in case she fell or needed help when alone. Mom was hesitant, concerned about invading Rebecca's privacy, but Dad was more receptive. "If it's for her safety, I think it's reasonable. We could tell her about them, of course. I think it might be better if we don't mention them right away," I suggested. "Just to get a genuine picture of how she's managing when we're not around." They exchanged glances but ultimately agreed. The next day, while Rebecca was at a support group meeting, I installed small, unobtrusive cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallways. Within a week, I had hours of footage showing a very different Rebecca than the one we all knew. When alone, she moved normally, ate foods she claimed caused severe reactions, and spent hours taking selfies for her illness blog, carefully arranging props and practicing pained expressions before snapping the photos. Most disturbing was a phone conversation I recorded between Rebecca and someone named Jen, apparently another online illness influencer. "The key is consistency with doctors," Rebecca explained, lounging comfortably on the couch with no sign of the back pain she'd complained about that morning. "If you doctor shop enough, you'll eventually find someone willing to diagnose something vague that can't be definitely proven or disproven. Chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, atypical autoimmune, those are gold mines because the symptoms fluctuate naturally." She laughed at something Jen said. "Exactly. And if anyone questions you, just accuse them of not believing in invisible illnesses. Works every time. Travis almost caught me today, but I just reminded him how lucky he is to be healthy and threw in some stuff about his privilege, and he backed right down." I shared the footage with Sarah, whose professional opinion confirmed what I already knew. "This is classic factitious disorder, possibly with elements of malingering since there seem to be secondary benefits like financial support and attention," she explained. "Travis, this isn't just harmless exaggeration. This is serious psychological manipulation." When Rebecca announced a fundraiser for an experimental treatment, not covered by insurance, I watched in disbelief as friends, family, and online followers donated over $50,000 to her cause. The treatment was supposedly available only at a specialized clinic across the country, requiring travel expenses and extended accommodation. Using the password she'd once shared with me, I logged into Rebecca's bank account and discovered she was using the fundraiser money for online shopping sprees, subscription services, and deposits on a vacation rental, nowhere near the medical facility she claimed to be consulting. I decided to confront her privately first, hoping she might admit the truth when faced with evidence. I chose a moment when our parents were out, and showed her a single clip of her dancing around the kitchen when she thought no one was home. "I can explain," she began, but I cut her off. "I think it's time to tell Mom and Dad the truth, Rebecca. This has gone too far." Her demeanor changed instantly. Gone was the fragile patient, replaced by cold calculation. "They'll never believe you. Do you know how many years I've spent cultivating their perception of me? You'll look like the jealous brother trying to sabotage his poor sick sister." When I insisted I would show them all the evidence, Rebecca's response was immediate and dramatic. She grabbed a nearby vase, smashed it on the floor, collapsed among the shards, and began screaming. By the time our parents rushed home from their errands, she was in full crisis mode, claiming the stress of my accusations had triggered a severe episode. That night, Rebecca was hospitalized for observation. My parents refused to look at any of my evidence, insisting my jealousy had gone too far. "How could you attack your sister like this when she's already suffering?" Mom demanded, tears streaming down her face. "What kind of person tries to discredit a sick family member?" Dad was even more direct. "I don't want to hear another word of this nonsense. If you can't be supportive, maybe you should keep your distance until you get your priorities straight." I left their house that night feeling utterly defeated. Rebecca had played her hand perfectly, strengthening her position while undermining mine. But rather than discouraging me, this setback only solidified my determination to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The fallout from my failed confrontation with Rebecca was swift and far-reaching. Sarah, who had stood by me through months of family drama, finally reached her breaking point. "I care about you, Travis, but I can't watch you destroy yourself trying to save people who don't want to be saved," she said during our last conversation. "Your sister needs professional help, but until your parents are willing to see the truth, nothing will change. And I can't be part of this toxic cycle anymore." I wanted to argue, to promise things would change, but I knew she was right. We parted with a hug and mutual tears, another casualty of Rebecca's elaborate deception. At work, the construction company where I'd been steadily building my career was feeling the strain of my constant absences. Rebecca, apparently sensing I was gathering evidence against her, had escalated her episodes to require even more of my time. 3 emergency room visits in 2 weeks had forced me to leave job sites during critical phases. My supervisor, Dale, called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. His expression was sympathetic but firm. "Travis, you know I value your work. When you're here, there's no one I'd rather have running projects." I knew what was coming. "But I'm not here enough." Dale nodded. "The promotion to senior manager we discussed, I can't offer it to you right now. Mark got the position. He's not as talented as you, but he's reliable. His family situations don't interfere with his work." I accepted the news with a resigned nod, another dream deferred because of Rebecca's machinations. That evening, as I sat alone in my apartment staring at a beer I didn't even have the energy to drink, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Your sister has some big news," she announced without preamble. "The doctors have found a specialized treatment center in Arizona that might be able to help her condition. We're having a family dinner next Saturday to discuss the logistics." My stomach tightened. Logistics? Well, the treatment requires at least 6 months of residence nearby. Your father and I have decided to sell the house so we can relocate temporarily to support her through this. It's a big change, but if it helps Rebecca get better, it's worth it. The house that had been in our family for 3 generations. The home where I'd grown up, where Dad had taught me to throw a baseball in the backyard, where Mom had nursed me through chicken pox and broken bones. They were selling it for a treatment that didn't exist for a condition that wasn't real. "Mom, before you make such a drastic decision, I really think we need to." "Travis, please," she interrupted, her voice strained. "This isn't the time for more of your theories. Rebecca needs our support now more than ever." After we hung up, I sat in silence for several minutes. Then, with sudden resolve, I called a number I'd been considering for weeks. Michael Preston was a private investigator recommended by one of my construction clients. His specialty was insurance fraud, often involving medical claims. If anyone could help me gather conclusive evidence, it would be him. We met the next morning at a coffee shop far from my parents' neighborhood. Michael was a compact, unassuming man with observant eyes and a matter-of-fact demeanor. "Family cases are always the hardest," he said after I'd explained the situation. "But what you're describing follows a classic pattern. If your sister is faking, she'll slip up when she thinks no one from her inner circle is watching." For the next 2 weeks, Michael tracked Rebecca's movements, documenting with photos and videos as she shopped for hours at the mall, attended yoga classes, and went dancing at clubs, all while supposedly suffering from debilitating symptoms. Most damning was footage of her meeting with friends at a restaurant, laughing as she described how she was working on a bigger cash grab than ever before. Michael also uncovered something I hadn't known existed, a private Instagram account under the username RealBeccaW, where Rebecca shared a very different life than her public Sixtagram persona. Here, she posted cocktails with friends, hiking photos, and shopping hauls. One post particularly turned my stomach, a selfie captioned, "Another Oscar-worthy performance at the doctor's today. Family totally buying it. Arizona vodka, here I come. Hashtag secret life, hashtag fool them all." While Michael was gathering this evidence, I discovered something equally disturbing on my own. Using the family computer when visiting my parents, I found Rebecca had been researching luxury condos in Sedona, not medical facilities in Phoenix as she claimed. She had even scheduled viewings for the week after our upcoming family dinner. The final catalyst came when Uncle James suffered a heart attack. When I visited him in the hospital, he looked smaller somehow, diminished against the white sheets. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. "How's the Rebecca situation?" he asked, his voice raspy. I shook my head. "Getting worse. They're selling the house to move to Arizona for her treatment." Uncle James closed his eyes briefly. "Your father called to borrow money for this move. $20,000. I told him I needed time to think." He looked at me directly. "The stress of all this, it's not good for my heart, the doctor says." "I'm gathering evidence," I told him. "Concrete proof no one can deny." "Good." He squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling them. Your sister needs consequences, not coddling." As I left the hospital, something hardened inside me. Rebecca's lies weren't just manipulating our parents anymore, they were potentially threatening Uncle James's life. The family dinner to discuss the Arizona move was scheduled for Saturday. I would be ready. I spent the next 3 days preparing my case meticulously. Michael provided a comprehensive report with time-stamped photos, videos, and social media screenshots. I gathered financial records showing Rebecca's misuse of fundraiser money. I compiled medical records with contradicting symptoms and diagnoses. I prepared a digital presentation that no one could dismiss as jealousy or misunderstanding. As a final precaution, I invited Dr. Melissa Chin, a colleague of Sarah's who specialized in factitious disorders, to attend the dinner as my guest. She agreed after reviewing some of the evidence, recognizing the seriousness of the situation. Saturday arrived, and as I parked outside my parents' home with Dr. Chin beside me and my evidence securely backed up on multiple devices, I felt an odd calm. Whatever happened tonight, the truth would finally be exposed. "Ready?" Dr. Chin asked. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "It's time to end this." The family dinner was set in our formal dining room, a space reserved for holidays and special occasions. Mom had pulled out all the stops, the good china, crystal glasses, flowers centerpiece, even candles. The guests included my parents, Rebecca, Uncle James, recently released from the hospital, Aunt Patricia, 2 cousins and their spouses, and a couple of family friends who had been particularly supportive of Rebecca's health journey. 14 people total, all about to witness the most dramatic family confrontation of our lives. Dr. Chin and I were the last to arrive. I introduced her simply as my friend Melissa, not wanting to reveal her profession yet. Rebecca was already holding court at the head of the table, supposedly her place of honor as the evening's focus. She wore a carefully curated outfit, loose enough to suggest comfort for someone ill, but stylish enough to garner compliments. Her makeup was subtle but strategic, giving her a pale, fragile appearance, and she had positioned a cane within reach that I'd never seen before. "Travis," she said warmly when I entered, though I caught the flicker of suspicion in her eyes when she noticed Dr. Chin. "I'm so glad you could make it. I was worried you might have to work late again." "I wouldn't miss this for anything," I replied, my tone pleasant but my meaning clear to her, if no one else. Dinner began with Mom's announcement that she had prepared only foods compatible with Rebecca's latest list of sensitivities. The conversation inevitably centered around Rebecca, her courage, her struggles, her excitement about the potential treatment in Arizona. The specialists there have had success with cases like mine, Rebecca explained, her voice delicate but clearly audible. It's an integrative approach combining medical treatment with alternative therapies. It sounds very promising, Aunt Patricia said, reaching over to pat Rebecca's hand. You've been through so much, dear. The financial aspect is challenging, Dad added, glancing around the table. But nothing matters more than Rebecca's health. I watched as several relatives exchanged glances, and my cousin Mark discreetly pulled out his checkbook. The fundraising had already begun. Rebecca launched into a detailed description of her suffering over the past month, new symptoms, medication side effects, the emotional toll of her condition. She dabbed at tears when describing how she sometimes feared she wouldn't wake up in the morning, causing Mom to reach for her hand. Throughout this performance, I remained silent, making eye contact with Uncle James across the table. His slight nod told me he was ready for what would come next. When the main course was finished and before dessert was served, Dad stood to make a toast to new beginnings and Rebecca's healing journey. May this treatment be the answer we've been praying for. As glasses were raised, I stood as well. Actually, I'd like to add something, if I may. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly, but her patient smile remained fixed. I've been doing some research of my own, I said, moving to the sideboard where I'd placed my laptop. About Rebecca's condition and this treatment center. Travis, Mom warned, this isn't the time for. Please, I said firmly. Just a few minutes of your attention. That's all I ask. I connected my laptop to the TV in the adjoining living room, visible to everyone at the table. What I'm about to show you wasn't easy to compile, and it certainly isn't easy to share. But it's necessary. The first slide appeared, a simple timeline of Rebecca's claimed medical history alongside documented contradictions. For nearly 10 years, Rebecca has claimed to suffer from a mysterious illness that has drained our family emotionally and financially. She's received approximately $250,000 in direct support from our parents, plus another $83,000 from various fundraisers and donations. Rebecca shifted in her chair, her expression darkening. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I clicked to the next slide, a split screen showing Rebecca's pitiful Instagram post from 3 weeks ago claiming she could barely walk, alongside Michael's surveillance photo from the same day showing her shopping with friends, carrying multiple bags. A murmur went through the dinner guests. This could be any day, Rebecca protested. You know I have good days and bad days. These were taken the same day, I confirmed, pointing to the timestamps. As were these. The next slide showed more pairs of contradictory images and videos. Rebecca in a wheelchair at a doctor's appointment, then dancing at a club that night. Rebecca telling our parents she couldn't eat certain foods, then ordering those exact foods at restaurants when alone. You've been stalking me? Rebecca's voice rose, a flush spreading across her previously pale cheeks. Documenting, I corrected. After finding too many inconsistencies to ignore. I played a short video clip of Rebecca's conversation with her friend, detailing how to manipulate doctors and family members. The room fell completely silent. But that's not all. I continued, clicking to financial records. The $50,000 raised for your experimental treatment 3 months ago? Here's where it actually went. The screen filled with transaction records, clothing websites, beauty products, concert tickets, deposits for vacation rentals, none of them remotely medical in nature. Rebecca stood abruptly, her cane forgotten. This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything because you've always been jealous of the attention my illness requires. Your illness, I repeated. Let's talk about that. I nodded to Dr. Chin, who stood and introduced herself properly. I'm Dr. Melissa Chin, specialist in factitious disorders at Portland Medical Center, she said calmly. Based on the evidence Travis has shared with me and what I've observed this evening, Rebecca displays classic signs of factitious disorder, possibly malingering. These are conditions where someone fabricates or exaggerates illness for emotional or tangible benefits. Rebecca's face contorted with rage before she suddenly clutched her chest and collapsed back into her chair. I can't breathe, she gasped, closing her eyes. My heart! I had anticipated this reaction. Dr. Chin, what would you expect to see in someone having the type of attack Rebecca is currently displaying? Dr. Chin approached Rebecca calmly. True cardiac distress would show different physical signs. The patient wouldn't be able to speak in complete sentences between gasps. There would be cyanosis, bluish discoloration of the lips or fingers, which isn't present. The pulse would be irregular. She reached for Rebecca's wrist to demonstrate. Rebecca yanked her hand away. Don't touch me. You're not my doctor. Rebecca. Uncle James spoke up for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. Stop this now. It's over. The room had grown intensely quiet. I clicked to the final slides, screenshots of Rebecca's secret Instagram account with her damning captions about fooling everyone, followed by her research into vacation properties in Sedona. The treatment center you've been describing doesn't exist, I concluded. There are excellent medical facilities in Phoenix, but nothing matching what you've described. You plan to take the money from selling our family home and disappear to a luxury condo in Sedona. Rebecca looked around the table, suddenly realizing she had lost control of the narrative. Her face transformed from feigned distress to unveiled fury. So what if I did? She snapped, dropping all pretense of weakness. Do you have any idea how suffocating this family is? Travis, the perfect son, always achieving, always responsible. The only way I could ever get any attention was to need something. To be broken enough that someone would actually see me. Mom started crying. Rebecca, how could you? We've given everything. That's right, you have. Rebecca shot back. And it was so easy. A few tears, a few medical terms I found online, and you'd all come running. Do you know how pathetic that makes you? Dad stood slowly, his face ashen. The fundraisers, the donations from our friends and family, our retirement savings. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Oh, please, spare me the guilt trip. You loved having a sick daughter to fuss over. It made you feel important, needed. We were all getting something out of this arrangement. The shocked silence that followed was broken by my cousin Mark tearing up the check he'd been writing. Aunt Patricia wiped tears from her eyes, shaking her head in disbelief. Seeing she was losing her audience, Rebecca switched tactics again, suddenly bursting into tears. I need help, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sick in a different way. I need therapy, compassion. But the transformation came too late. One by one, dinner guests stood and began making excuses to leave. Aunt Patricia hugged my mother tightly, whispering something in her ear before departing. My cousins couldn't even look at Rebecca as they walked out. Rebecca's desperation grew as her support system evaporated before her eyes. Mom, Dad, you can't believe this. After everything we've been through together. Dad shook his head slowly. I don't know what to believe anymore. I need time to process this. Travis is lying. He's manipulated all of this evidence. Her voice took on a hysterical edge. I'm really sick now. The stress of his accusations is causing real symptoms. But her performance had lost its power. Even Mom, who had been Rebecca's fiercest defender, looked at her daughter with new eyes, hurt, confused, and finally, suspicious. As the last dinner guests departed, Rebecca turned her fury directly on me. You've ruined everything, she hissed. I will never forgive you for this. I met her gaze steadily. I'm not the one who needs forgiveness. Left alone with our parents, Rebecca made one last desperate attempt to salvage her story, claiming she had exaggerated her symptoms, but there was some real illness underneath. But the dam had broken, and years of deception couldn't be repaired with more lies. I think you should stay with your friend Jen tonight, Dad finally said, his voice heavy with disappointment. We all need some space. As Rebecca gathered her things, furiously shoving items into her purse, the enormity of what had just happened settled over the dining room. Years of manipulation exposed, trust shattered, relationships damaged perhaps beyond repair. But beneath the devastation was something else, the first fragile glimmer of truth and the possibility of genuine healing. The days following the confrontation felt like moving through thick fog. Mom retreated to her bedroom, emerging only for necessities, her eyes perpetually red-rimmed. Dad threw himself into yard work, spending hours aggressively pruning shrubs and power washing the driveway, anything to keep moving, to avoid the stillness where thoughts would catch up with him. Rebecca disappeared to Jen's apartment, her social media accounts suddenly dormant after years of constant updates. The silence from her corner of the world was jarring in its own way. 3 days after the dinner, I received an unexpected call from Sarah. "I heard what happened," she said. "Dr. Chen told me. That took incredible courage, Travis." "I'm not sure courage is the right word," I replied, looking around my empty apartment. "I feel like I've destroyed my family." "You didn't destroy anything," Sarah said firmly. "Rebecca's lies did that. You just brought the truth to light." A week passed before my parents called and asked me to come over. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, looking older than I'd ever seen them. "We've been going through Rebecca's medical records," Dad said, gesturing to a stack of folders. "Comparing notes, dates, symptoms. The inconsistencies are overwhelming once you're looking for them." Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "All those years, the money, the worry, the sacrifices. Everyone else's lives put on hold. How could we have been so blind?" "Because you love her," I said gently. "And because Rebecca is very good at what she does. This isn't just ordinary lying, it's pathological. Dr. Chen referred us to a family therapist who specializes in these situations," Dad continued. "We had our first session yesterday. She says families of people with factitious disorder often experience something similar to grief, mourning the person they thought they knew. That's exactly how it feels," Mom whispered. "Like my daughter died, and I don't know who this person is who took her place." The family therapist had advised my parents to establish firm boundaries with Rebecca, including financial separation. Dad had already frozen joint accounts, changed online banking passwords, and contacted the family lawyer about protecting their assets. They had also decided not to sell the house, a decision that clearly brought them relief. Rebecca's reaction to these boundaries was predictable. First came rage, furious text messages and voicemails accusing them of abandonment and cruelty. When that didn't work, she switched to claiming she was suicidal, which prompted Mom to call emergency services for a welfare check. The responding officers found Rebecca and Jen preparing to go out dancing, completely fine. Next came manipulation through other family members. Distant relatives received tearful calls about how her parents had turned against her because of her illness. But word of the dinner confrontation had spread, and these attempts gained little traction. Throughout this time, I maintained a careful distance, supporting my parents but letting them navigate their own relationship with Rebecca. Uncle James became their rock, visiting regularly and helping them sort through the financial damage. The estimate was staggering, nearly $400,000 over 10 years when accounting for all medical expenses, special accommodations, and lost income. "We'll need to postpone retirement by at least 5 years," Dad told me during one of our conversations. "But we'll manage. The important thing is that we're not hemorrhaging money anymore." About 3 weeks after the confrontation, Rebecca launched a counteroffensive on social media, portraying herself as a victim of family abuse. She claimed I had fabricated evidence out of jealousy and that our parents had abandoned her in her time of greatest need. Her illness community rallied around her initially, but when presented with evidence by those who had attended the dinner, many began distancing themselves. Some of her followers, however, were other illness fakers who recognized a kindred spirit and circled the wagons. They created a support fundraiser for Rebecca's emergency relocation and treatment needs, which raised several $1,000s before being flagged for fraud investigation. The most difficult moment came when Rebecca finally returned to our parents' house to collect more of her belongings. I arrived midway through her visit at Mom's request, finding a tense standoff in the living room. "You can't keep my car," Rebecca was saying. "It's mine. I need it." "The car is in our name," Dad replied calmly. "It was purchased with our money for your medical appointments, which we now know weren't necessary." Rebecca spotted me and her expression hardened. "Of course you're here." The family hero, swooping in to save everyone from Big Bad Rebecca. "I'm just here to support Mom and Dad," I said, maintaining my distance. "Support them? You've turned them against me. My entire support system, gone because of your lies." Mom flinched. "Rebecca, please. We're not against you. We want you to get proper help." "I don't need help," Rebecca shouted, then immediately modulated her voice, an old habit reasserting itself. "I mean, not the kind you're suggesting. My symptoms are real. Maybe I exaggerated sometimes, but that doesn't mean I'm not sick." "Rebecca," Dad said quietly, "we found your medication. In your bathroom drawer. Full bottles, never opened, expired. Medications we paid thousands for, that you claimed were keeping you alive." Rebecca's facade cracked further. "You went through my things? That's invasion of privacy. I could sue you." "With what money?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flashed with hatred. "This isn't over. None of you have any idea what I'm capable of." After she stormed out, Mom collapsed onto the couch. "I don't recognize her anymore. How did we raise someone who could do this?" The family therapist had prepared them for this question. Factitious disorder wasn't caused by bad parenting, it developed from complex psychological factors. Still, I knew they would always wonder what they could have done differently, what signs they might have missed. In the following weeks, Rebecca made several attempts to regain control. She showed up at Dad's workplace claiming a medical emergency, causing a scene that nearly got him in trouble. She sent me threatening messages about exposing me for unspecified crimes if I didn't retract my lies. She even contacted Sarah at the hospital, claiming malpractice because Dr. Chen had shared medical opinions at the dinner. None of these tactics worked. The truth, once revealed, created a protective barrier against her manipulations. It was exhausting and painful, but gradually her attempts became less frequent as she realized they were futile. 2 months after the confrontation, we received news that Rebecca had moved to Seattle with Jen. The distance brought both relief and sadness, a complicated emotional mixture that the therapist assured my parents was normal. "I miss who I thought she was," Mom confessed during dinner one night. "Is that strange? To miss someone who never really existed?" "No," I said, taking her hand. "I miss her too sometimes. The sister I wanted to believe in, even when the evidence was staring me in the face." We were all grieving in our own ways, not for the loss of Rebecca herself, but for the loss of the family we thought we had, the relationships we believed were real. Yet amid the grief, there was also an unmistakable sense of liberation. For the first time in a decade, we were living in truth, however painful it might be. 1 month became 3, then 6. Seasons changed, and slowly, our family began to find a new normal. Mom started volunteering at a local community garden, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for during Rebecca's illness. Dad joined a weekend fishing club with friends he'd lost touch with over the years. Small changes that represented enormous shifts in their lives. The financial recovery was more challenging. Years of depleted savings couldn't be quickly replenished, but they worked with a financial advisor to create a realistic plan. They would need to work longer than planned, but retirement wasn't completely out of reach. "It's strange," Dad remarked as we reviewed their budget one evening. "I feel poorer on paper but richer in reality. No more $1,000 specialist appointments or emergency medical travel." Uncle James became a regular presence at family gatherings, his heart condition improving without the stress of Rebecca's constant dramas. "Best medicine I could have asked for," he joked, though we all recognized the truth in his words. My own life transformed as well. I reconnected with Sarah, initially just for coffee to catch up, but our connection remained strong. She had started a new position at the hospital, and seemed genuinely happy to see me. "I never stopped caring about you," she admitted during our third meeting. "I just couldn't watch you sacrifice yourself for a situation that was destroying you." "I understand now," I told her. "And I'm sorry I couldn't see it clearly then." We began dating again, more slowly this time, with better boundaries and clearer communication. Sarah was patient as I worked through lingering guilt about Rebecca, reminding me that compassion didn't require enabling destructive behavior. At work, I received the promotion that had previously gone to Mark. Dale called me into his office with good news. "Your performance these past months has been exceptional. No more emergency calls, no more leaving job sites unexpectedly. Whatever was happening in your personal life, it seems you've resolved it." "I have," I confirmed, accepting the promotion with a sense of validation. Another piece of my life reclaimed from Rebecca's chaos. We received occasional updates about Rebecca through mutual connections. She had found a new community in Seattle, was working part-time at a boutique, and appeared to be living without claiming any mysterious illnesses. Whether this represented genuine change or simply a fresh start with new targets for manipulation, we couldn't know. For months after moving to Seattle, Rebecca sent our parents an email. It wasn't exactly an apology, she still maintained she had some real health issues. That she had, perhaps exaggerated due to emotional needs not being met. But it was the closest thing to accountability she had ever offered. Mom and Dad responded cautiously, expressing hope for her well-being but maintaining their boundaries. They made it clear that any potential reconciliation would require Rebecca to seek professional help and demonstrate sustained honesty, conditions she didn't appear ready to accept. For my part, I maintained no contact with Rebecca. The betrayal ran too deep, the manipulation too calculated. Perhaps someday reconciliation might be possible, but for now, distance was the healthiest choice for everyone. The most unexpected development came 6 months after the confrontation. I received a message from Jen, Rebecca's former friend and accomplice. "Rebecca doesn't know I'm contacting you," she wrote. "We're not friends anymore. I just wanted you to know she's doing the same thing here in Seattle. New doctors, new symptoms, new fundraiser." I enabled it for too long because I was doing something similar, but watching her destroy another family made me realize how sick this behavior really is. "I'm getting help now, and I thought you should know she isn't." I shared this information with my parents, who decided to reach out to Rebecca's new boyfriend with a compassionate warning. Whether he would believe them remained to be seen, but they felt obligated to try, to potentially spare others the pain we had experienced. On the anniversary of the confrontation dinner, my parents, Uncle James, Sarah, and I gathered for a quiet meal. So much had changed in a year. The heavy cloud of anxiety that had hung over every family interaction for a decade had lifted. Conversations no longer revolved around illness and crisis. Laughter returned to our gatherings, genuine laughter, not the strained kind that had become our norm. "I propose a toast," Uncle James said, raising his glass. "To truth, however difficult. And to healing, however slow." We clinked glasses, the simple gesture symbolizing how far we'd come. Mom still had moments of profound sadness, questioning how she could have missed the signs for so long. Dad sometimes fell into brooding silences, calculating the years and resources lost to deception. I still occasionally woke from dreams where I was trying to convince people of a truth they refused to see. But these moments no longer defined us. We were learning to trust again, ourselves and each other. We were reclaiming our lives one day at a time. As for Rebecca, I've come to understand that her deception was never really about me, though I bore the brunt of many consequences. Her lies stemmed from something broken within herself, a void she tried to fill with attention and care she didn't know how to obtain honestly. I can recognize this without accepting her behavior or allowing it back into my life. The family therapist once told us that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or removing boundaries. It means releasing the consuming anger that keeps you chained to the past. By that definition, I think I'm slowly finding forgiveness, not for Rebecca's sake, but for my own. Life is too precious to waste on lies, too short to spend captive to someone else's manipulations. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's the liberating power of truth, even when that truth breaks your heart before it sets you free. If you've ever found yourself doubting your own perceptions while someone insists their version of reality is correct, know that you're not alone. Trust your instincts. Document inconsistencies. Seek outside perspectives. And remember that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling destructive patterns, even when it feels like cruelty in the moment. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever dealt with someone who consistently manipulated the truth? How did you handle it? Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for truth is worth the cost. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, living honestly isn't always easy, but it's always worth it.